KBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Now, those that remember your history very well, when Winston Churchill arrived in Uganda, he looked at the beauty of this country and said, Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, named it the Pearl of Africa. One thing interesting with this country is you can leave one part of the 5 divisions of Kampala when it is raining heavily, and you get to the other part when there just drizzles, and then the other, it's cats and dogs. So in case you're coming to town, well, more so in the central business district, carry yourself an umbrella, carry something to keep you warm, because I don't know if it's raining where you are right now and you're watching us, but in case your destination is Kampala, please carry something. And if you have infants, please ensure they are warm, they are safe, because some of them have games they enjoy, like playing in the rain. At the end of the day, they get up, they end up contracting some diseases. Up to today, I don't know the connection between fever and rain, because I remember when we were young, they would tell us, don't play in the rain, you will get a fever. But science, well, I stand to understand very well the connection. You'll get malaria, and I'm like, but it's a female anopheles mosquito that transmits malaria. Anyway, that is something for you parents there, because there was so much we are being taught. Now today we are going to be discussing something that is in the hearts of so many people, and that is politics. We are going to be discussing multi-party politics in our country. Have we understood multi-party politics from 2005 when we decided that let's all go into our political parties? And I remember by then there was a saying, I don't know why they used that word. Because you weren't goats, I must say. But they said, no, now they have let us go, let every person go to the political party of their choice. And joining me on set to discuss this is a seasoned political analyst, and he is also Uganda's Consul General of Uganda's Consulate in Dubai, Ambassador Henry Mayega, who happens to be with me this cold morning, and I know he's glad wherever he's home. His Excellency, you're most welcome to our studios this morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for this opportunity. How is Dubai?
Dubai is okay. I just came for Christmas, and I'll be going back tomorrow.
Okay.
But lots of opportunities for Uganda in terms of attracting investment from there to this place, and also in terms of Ugandans who go there to do decent jobs, because the population of Ugandans in Dubai actually is in the region of about 100,000 in the entire UAE, but the majority of the Ugandans actually live in Dubai. So it's a very big opportunity for Ugandans to make a living, but at the same time, given the fact that we concluded the expo last year, the 2020 Dubai Expo, from which we as a country benefited a lot, because there is lots of investment that is coming to the country as a result of that expo that happened in Dubai. So Dubai is a good place to be. It's a commercial center of the Arab world and the Middle East, and the main financial center where lots of economic and financial activities do take place. So it's a very good place. Yeah.
I'm planning to be there for my honeymoon when I have my wedding, when that time reaches.
I wish it could come this year.
Hey, by the way, are you aware that many Ugandans, their honeymoon destination is Dubai?
Absolutely, yes, I agree 100%.
See many there taking whether in the sun, enjoying this, those landscapes, sending home. We were there.
Absolutely. Because it is midway, the west, and also the east. And it's just 4.5 hours by flight.
Yeah, by flight.
Absolutely.
But I think also getting a visa or that, it's more easier than any other country, maybe we would say.
The visa, yes, has been very easy to get from the UAE. Until recently, when we had some issues to do with the Ugandans who were there and they were misbehaving, and that's how we got into a little bit of problems. Otherwise, the visa was, you would apply for a visa in the morning, and in the afternoon you have it. but because some of our children who have been to Dubai and of course, whenever they visited, they would go as if they were tourists. Of course, that was the claim in the application for the visas.
Visitor visa.
Absolutely. And then the visas would expire, then they would get into problems.
Overstay
issues and so on and so forth. And that's what really caused a little bit of discomfort. And so the visa of recent has become a little bit tighter to get.
Now, let's come back home to the topic of the day, which is multi-party democracy in Uganda. We know that 2005, Ugandans chose through a referendum that they go into multi-party dispensation. But since then, we have had political parties. We have had people that are bigger than political parties, from which they come from. We've had independents aligned to political parties. So we've had where they will tell you an election that he's NRM, but he's on independent ticket. He's NUP, but independent ticket. Then you wonder, how would you be NRM, then your independent ticket? Then we've had a parliament where it is very fine for you. You can oppose your party stance, but when you come to parliament, then we have a memorandum of understanding. We've had all this confusion. These years down the road, what do you make of our multi-party dispensation as a country? A brief generalization, then we shall dissect.
Well, the histories of this country are extremely important for us to appreciate, because after independence in 1962, Uganda went multi-party. The DP, CP, UPC were the main players at the time. And then somehow we got into a confusion around 1971 after the Idi Amin coup. Of course, parties were not in existence anymore. Idi Amin ruled by decrees. There was no parliament, there was absolutely no political party to speak about. And throughout the 70s, there was nothing. Now, 1980, because this history is extremely important for people to understand. In 1980, we had elections, which became a little bit, I think, controversial. And so Yoweri Museveni and others went to the bush, and as a result, but we had parties from 80 to 85. As to whether they were functioning very well, I'm not very sure. But we had parties. And then after the coup of 85 and the takeover of 1986, January, again, we had the movement system. And over the years, from 86 onwards, up to 2005, to cut the long story short, people yearned to have the parties back. So we had a referendum in 2005. The multi-party democracy political dispensation was restored in the country. And there was so many parties sprang up, I think over 50, as for the last count which we made. There were over 50, but of recent, I think the parties which have stood the ground, the NRM, the DP, the UPC, the FDC, and quite a couple of others which have come up over the years. But I think we plunge into this thing called multi-party political dispensation without probably, in my view, educating ourselves about how does a multi-party political dispensation or system function without causing discomfort, without causing all sorts of confusion and so on and so forth. We need to appreciate that, because we can claim, for instance, that we've had multi-party democracy for the last 17 years. Yeah. And so the sticking points are still there, where, as you said, people have not, understood properly what multi-party, what belonging to a political party actually means. And therefore, when, for instance, a constituency falls vacant, there are always problems. As a result, for instance, an MP dying, should the son or daughter be the one to succeed him? And then there is always a debate as to whether those things are actually hereditary, which in my view they are not, of course. But of course the passions in those kinds of constituencies are usually so high.
In law, there is what we call precedent, and I must say maybe on that precedent has been set for a long time. We began with Ken Uchamuzi after having issues with the office of the Attorney General failing to declare his the DPP's office. He went, we saw the daughter. Now there we saw Langati, youngest MP after the father's death. We've seen the likes of Robert Sebunya coming after Chibirige Sebunya. We've seen the likes of now Jacob Bolanya's son taking over. It is chaotic what is happening in Serere. We don't know how it's going to end. We've seen Serena Nevada when the sister had to come in. So it is like precedented that this is now something that if it has happened here, why can't it happen there?
Absolutely, I agree 100%, because I was going to the point where I wanted to mention what has been happening in the US for the last 250, it's now coming actually 260 years since they got into a multi-party political dispensation. But they still have sticking point. You can imagine that after 260 years, still people have issues to sort. They're debating all sorts of things, including, the other day there was an insurrection, you remember, on Capitol Hill, but they have a multi-party system. So I think it will take us quite a bit of time for us to appreciate what a multi-party system actually, or how it actually works, because in my view it takes a lot of time for people to appreciate. But of course, to come to your point, the other day in the UK, again another example, a Labour MP was stabbed to death, and there was that kind of, should I call it a gentleman's agreement between the Conservatives and the Labour diarists, where the Conservative Party said, okay, since this constituency has been held by a Labour Party, we are not fielding a candidate. You go ahead and field a candidate to fill that vacant position of a Member of Parliament. So these things, as you say, are precedented, not only here, but also abroad. They've been happening, where if somebody dies, then the son or daughter, or even a relative, comes up and takes up the responsibility as a Member of Parliament and so on and so forth. And of course, even at presidency, you remember we had the Bushes, we have had the candidates trying to become president again, and here in Kenya you've had Uhuru, who was son of Kenyatta, the post-independence president of Kenya, and so on and so forth. All these things are related in my view. So the question that we should be asking ourselves is whether these things actually mean well for a country. Well, if the people who elected them actually agree with the fact that if somebody dies, another one can take over, another one from the family can actually replace those people who have actually died, so be it. But when you look at the constitutions of these political parties, they are silent on that issue. I have not seen a constitution that says that an incumbent Member of Parliament, when they die, then a relative should take, or actually laying out a procedure that should be followed, so that that party which has actually been holding that constituency should field a relative. Because what I have seen is that there is that claim, again, which probably is not written in any one of the constitutions of these political parties, that if I have been a flag bearer, in the last partial elections, for example, in 2021, the elections that we had here, if a by-elections happens before the expiry of that term, then I should be the flag bearer for the rest of those 5 years in that period of time. That one, they have not seen a constitution that talks about that. And so that's why there is a little bit of confusion between the flag bearer who is there, even if there is a relative of, for instance, an independent candidate who has died. So there is that little bit of confusion. How we sort it out is probably to revisit our constitutions and then see how to sort out, so that it reduces the amount of confusion and friction that arises after somebody has died.
Well, Ambassador Maega, most of the times we've had political analysts allude to the gaps, the challenges in our political system as we are a growing democracy. Some will tell you United States took them this time, all that. But for everything, we look at the foundation. Today we are talking about political parties in Uganda. One, do we have political parties? Because when you look at most of the political parties, they seem like personal property. Or they seem like person to holder. I don't want to mention them. But in some, if the either chairperson woke up and said, or the president said, I've now begun another party, they will cease to happen. One once time cracked a joke and said, if today His Excellency, the chairman of NRM, woke up and said, now, today I'm leaving NRM, I'm starting another party, maybe it would cease. Someone talked about NUP. If Robert Kyagulanyi woke up and said, personally, I think I no longer want to be a party president, I mean, yes, but the president, I'm going into something else. Maybe it would cease. We have the likes of Bidani, who the party. So, do we have political parties in Uganda that are built on ideology, that qualify as political party, or do we have registered entities that we've used as political vehicles to fill political positions?
Absolutely. You started the argument very well when you mentioned it that political parties have to grow over time. There is absolutely no way how a political party can come or can grow up to maturity without going through a lot of stages. And so that takes a little bit of time. And of course, you also agreed with me that the Americans have had those two political parties, the Republicans and Democrats, for centuries, not even decades, but centuries. But up to now, they still have those issues. Now, coming back to Africa, the political parties, for instance, President Yoweri Museveni, or I can even probably extrapolate the argument further back into the history of Uganda, because like Milton Obote founded the UPC, Ben Chiwanuka founded the DP, and Mayanja Nkanyi founded the CP, and quite a number of others. And the moment those people left those parties, the parties became weak. So that definitely confirms the argument that you're bringing about. It is because, in my view, that these leaders of these political parties are very strong people, strong-willed people, and so they wield a lot of influence on these political parties. I don't want to argue that in the US, anyone who leads any one of those political parties actually don't wield a lot of influence and political power. Because right now, as you know, the Republicans have got Trump, who says he's coming back to contest for president. And he's still the incumbent, and therefore the flag bearer. He hasn't left. And so the Republican Party is grappling with that. Amongst the Democrats in the US, because these examples must come to us, so that we appreciate and then compare what's happening here and also what's happening outside. The Democrats, there is a debate also amongst the Democrats as to whether they should have Biden as their presidential candidate in the coming elections, which are coming, I think, next year or something like that. And so there is that debate, because according to quite a number of people amongst the Democrats, they are arguing that the man is too old and so on and so forth, and probably his mental faculties are beginning to fail. And so there are those arguments. So coming back home here, I agree with you, parties must grow over time. And secondly, the other point probably which Ugandans need to notice is that the political parties that we've had in the past, including the ones that we have at the moment, including your party, so to speak, all of them, it is this founder who is a very strong person. Like President Yoweri Museveni is a very strong person, and he has done a very good job. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He has done a very good job for his own part and also for the country. But his strong influence to have stabilized the country, to have returned the multi-party political system to the country. All these things make him a very strong character. He's a very strong personality. And therefore, if at one point in time, God forbid, he says that I've left the leadership of the NRM and I'm creating a new political party, that definitely will have a lot of ramifications for the NRM. So it is that strong influence that these people have over these parties, just like Obote had. And when he left, of course, the UPC is now really a caricature of its old self. And it's not the party that people knew, those who belonged to it in the 60s and in the 70s and in the 80s. So that strong influence, that strong personality, that strong power that these people wield definitely brings all sorts of competing ideas, ideologies, and probably some, should I say, divergent persuasions within a political party. That strong person brings all these people together. The moment this person goes away, or the moment this person leaves and goes and forms another political party, that will have definitely a lot of ramifications.
Well, what does this, should we say our foundation for political parties, they weren't founded on the right foundation? Looking at what you've just said, because we believe a political party should not be formed basically on individuals. It should be on ideologies. There should be things that bring them together. And many times we've had political analysts still say that many of these political parties don't even have ideologies. You even ask the people in these parties, what do you stand for? Someone will tell you, I belong to NRM because in this particular part of the country, for you to win an election, you must belong to NRM. We saw people rush to National Unity Platform, mostly here in Central. Someone will tell you, if it wasn't NUP. And of course that we know, that there are some people Ugandans would have never voted for them had they not come because of NUP. But that doesn't mean that they understood what NUP stands for, if it has an ideology. I remember one, Nabila just entered a few days to the elections, then she's crossed here, then she's now with NUP, then she has the flag. All these confusions here. Do you think we began political parties on the right foundation?
Well, let's go back again to the 1960s, where we were talking about basically two strong political parties, the DP and the UPC. The UPC was socialistic leaning, and the DP was, in terms of ideology, thinking in terms of having a mixed economy for the country. And so that is an ideology. But still they had those very strong men leading these two political parties. On the one hand, the UPC had Milton Obote and Benny Chiwanuka for the DP. And both of them very strong-willed personalities, wielding a lot of influence, having a lot of power. I'm not saying that, of course, these parties didn't have ideology. They had ideology. In terms of politics, UPC was socialistic and the DP was capitalistic, so to speak. And so the ideologies were actually there. Even the NRM has got, it has got that ideology, which is socio-economic transformation and Pan-Africanism. Socio-economic transformation in this country, in Uganda, and Pan-Africanism just for purposes of bringing all the African countries together and making sure that we actually progress as a continent. So the ideologies are actually there. I've not seen, because I'm a student of political science and public administration and management, and I've not seen any one organization that doesn't have an ideology, because even the thieves have got an ideology. Basically to steal. The ideology is to steal and probably amass wealth. And so all these organizations, all these political parties have got actual ideologies, including these ones which sprang up the other day, including NUP, as you said. They have ideologies, but how you manage those ideologies vis-a-vis the leadership that you have in place, so that the political party can actually outlive you after you have left, whether through retirement and otherwise. So extremely important for all political parties to revisit the way they are doing these things, so that those particular political parties can actually outlive their leaderships. Because it's extremely important that even after I've left Henry Maiga, if I'm a leader of a political party, the political party is in a position to continue operating in the political space that is provided in the country. Extremely important. But of course I take your point. Ideologies are there. All political parties have got those ideologies. But what we should be working towards is ensuring that political parties can actually outlive their leaderships.
Well, we'll be going for a short break, and when we return, we want to look at cadre recruitment, cadre development in these political parties. That how do people get to these political parties? How are people mentored in these political parties? Because when you talk about the likes of Chama Pinduzi, when you talk about the Communist Party of China, when we talk about the NC, that is South Africa, you find that these political parties, you don't wake up today that you belong to this political party, and by evening, you're celebrating, handing over your card and saying, I denounce DP, I now become NRM. I denounce NUP. That's not how things are done. They do not just come up with someone, they tell you this is our flag bearer. That's not how things are done. We'll take a look at what happens in Uganda and what must we rectify. We'll return shortly. Keep it with us here on UBC TV.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
The Ministry of Health informs the public that there are confirmed cases of Ebola in Uganda. We, however, urge the public not to panic as the situation is being managed. The Ministry of Health further reminds the public to be on the lookout for any persons who may show signs and symptoms of Ebola. These include high body temperature, abdominal pains, diarrhea, vomiting, bleeding from the body openings such as the nose, eyes, and mouth. Please inform the nearest health worker immediately if you see anyone with these signs and symptoms. To prevent Ebola from spreading further, please take the following preventive measures: regular washing of hands with water and soap, avoid handshaking and hugging, avoiding any contact with any suspected Ebola patients. Any person who dies suddenly should not be buried but reported to the nearest health worker or LC1 immediately. For further information, please call the Ministry of Health toll-free number on 0800 100 066 or send a free SMS to your report on 8500. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and World Health Organization.
The 37th National Resistance Movement Liberation Day is here. This will be celebrated on the 26th of January 2023 under the theme, "Our tireless effort to transform Uganda is a promise we can't afford to fail." The NRM government has made a lot of achievements in the different sectors like infrastructure development, health sector, ICT, agriculture, education and sports, trade and industry, not forgetting peace and security. This year's event will be held at Kakeka Grounds, Kakumiro Town Council, Kakumiro District. Long live NRM, long live Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome back from that short break, and thank you for being with us on UBC TV. It is still Good Morning Uganda Extra, an extension of Good Morning Uganda, where we have a guest in studios and we discuss matters of national concern. Now, this time we are discussing multi-party dispensation, in case you've just joined us. It was in 2005 when we went for a referendum and decided that let people go, let them feel free to participate in political parties of their choice. The journey has been long. It has had a number of challenges. Now we want to see where have we gone wrong and later what can we rectify. Before we went for the break, I had brought in the issue of cadre, that is recruitment, mentorship as well, and development. Those parties we talk about, you'll find that they even identify who they want to recruit. When this will come to the party, they are trained, they are mentored, they are developed, different talents that they have, and later that is you'll find that they may be very few in the party, but vehemently strong. Now, when we come back home here, I can wake up today, I'm in NRM. Tomorrow I'm in NUP. The following day, I'm impressed, I'm in FDC. Whenever we are going into an electoral year, we see usually a shift of people from one party to the other. When FDC came here, it took what it took from Democratic Party. When NUP came, it robbed or it took what it took from FDC. There are people I know that were in opposition and said, no, for this constituency, you're not NRM, you're not winning. Therefore, if you want to win, cross over to NRM. So this, some have even called it political prostitution, that people lack bases. Now, Ambassador, first, is this something that political parties should really take seriously? Or in a developing democracy, let's say it's okay and it's just a matter of time?
Absolutely. First of all, a political party is not a prison. because people are free to come in and free to get out as and when they wish, which is okay in my view.
And the NRM, you talk about a mass party.
Absolutely, mass party, because people are all the time entering. Some are getting out, by the way.
The bus.
Some get out, yes, some get out of the bus and then they join other political parties, which is okay in my view, because that is how democracy works. I've seen those kinds of things also happen in the US, except that in that place they are not really en masse. You know, and it's very interesting because when you go to the US, actually the memberships of these two political parties is very small, maybe 100,000 each. And when you go to the UK, same story. The membership of the Conservatives and the Labour Party are usually very small, maybe 30,000 or something. And those are the ones who elect the flag bearer for Prime Minister and so on and so forth. But then the electorate keeps swaying either side, because I hear this, if there is an election today in the UK, for instance, the Conservatives will fall. But coming back home, extremely important. Cadreship is a very, very important subject, and how I wish that we could expand this, conversation in the near future, so that we talk about it. It's extremely important for a political party to survive. Because you remember at the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about how does a political party survive? How does it survive beyond the leader who it has, and that is extremely important. So cadreship, in my view, or development of cadreship, is a process. And you heavily actually mentioned the stages through which cadreship development should go. One is identification. The second one is recruitment. And then training, which you used another term to refer to training. And then placement. Otherwise, if you don't go through these stages, you're making a mistake. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to have cadres. You're not going to have those really convicted members of that political party who can stand with it through thick and thin, through good times and bad times. Extremely important for any political party, including my own political party, the NRM. Cadreship development is something that we cannot avoid, extremely important. And especially when it comes to placement of these cadres of a political party. If you don't do it very well through, the stages that we've talked about, you're going to end up actually pushing, like the English would say, a square peg into a round hole. Even when it comes to placement, you must make sure that that cadre is placed onto a job or a position or a place where actually their capacities, their skills and dexterity are actually befitting. Extremely important. So it's a process, I agree, that any political party worth its name must go through identification. Yeah, because everybody is there. All political parties anyway go to identify these people who are going to be part of our cadres. And these are the people who, even when it comes to elections, that spring up and go and take the responsibility of ensuring that they look for the vote. They are very important. It's not just a question of placing them in jobs, probably in public service jobs and so on and so forth. No. But when even it comes, even some of them are actually cadres in markets. They're not even employed by government. They are in markets, they are in the private sector and so on and so forth, but they are still cadres who you can fall back on and say, look, we are now going to look for votes, like we're going to look for the votes in 2026, and then you really charge them with the responsibility of looking for these votes. So cadres are a structure that any political party that wants to survive for the very long future must have, must identify, must train, must place in places where they are most effective. Extremely important. That one you can't avoid. So it's a process.
Well,
I agree with you.
But has brought so much confusion for Uganda's political parties.
Absolutely.
And I don't know why either we aren't taking it seriously or there are other issues. And now this brings me to political party financing. Because we know a number of political parties where even some people seemingly seem greater than the parties is finances. And for any political party to thrive, yes, money is a need. We've seen some parties having investments, not in Uganda, but outside Uganda. These parties have huge investments. Of course, here we've seen some trials here, but I think it's just let's have offices, let's buy offices. How do we improve political party financing? Many years down the road, you hear, depending on well-wishers, you hear he who begins the political party actually is the one struggling with the funding of that political party. Therefore, he can dominate You go to a decision-making platform, yet decisions have already been made because the rest of you, he's the man running the day-to-day affairs of the political party. We've had attempts through iPod, we've had attempts through very many, but we're not seeing political parties making key investments or sources of funding. Yes, you can deduct from MPs, deduct some portion from councillors, but that is, I don't think, sustainable. How do we work on that as an impediment to successful and smooth running on principles of our political parties?
We cannot run away from the fact that finances for a political party, any political party, are extremely important, because you have to run offices. Even that cadreship that you're talking about, you must fund it. When it comes to elections, the expenditure becomes so enormous for any one political party, and you must look for people to give you the money. I one time visited one of the states in the US, of Colorado, and I had a chat with the mayor. We had gone for the UNA convention, and I asked him, how do you finance your political parties? And he told me that political parties definitely first of all, political parties are voluntary, and therefore much of the funding is going to come from those volunteers, or actually people with whom you share ideology, especially in the private sector and so on and so forth. So they keep giving that money. So financing political parties is extremely important, and in the spirit, I like the spirit in which the government of Uganda enacted the law about how parties should be funded, depending on the proportion of MPs they have in parliament. As to whether that satisfies the opposition in this country, that's a different matter, and probably it's one thing that we can discuss probably in the future. But the spirit in which the government saw this matter, I think, was extremely important. That look, political parties at least must have, since we say that we have gone multi-party, then that means that these parties definitely must have some basics in order for them to survive and do some political work. Because an opposition is not really the devil, which some people may think. The opposition is, especially if it becomes constructive, and because it advises government, those who are in government, opposition advises them, and they say, okay, if it was us, which I don't see most of the time, the opposition in this country trying to advise government, or actually providing alternative things that can be done
so
by
it's
government.
never the government in wanting it. It's remained
absolutely
it remained, because I think also sometimes English is a problem here.
Yeah.
Whenever we call it the opposition, there are countries that you never hear the word opposition. Alternative government, government in waiting.
Right.
You know, such terms that they even speak, if you're the government in waiting, then you won't want things to go wrong, because you won't ban cities, you know, because you know, we are next, we are coming over. If you're alternative government, that means you're looking for alternative principles and maybe sell them out. But the more we've talked about opposition, means I'm opposing you, I'm just fighting you.
That's right. That would be a very good reformation to stop probably using the word opposition.
How can I be called leader of opposition in parliament?
Because it has ceased to make a lot of sense to many people. Because the job is to oppose. Even where the government is doing good things, you just oppose.
If I'm the leader, I'd rather tell them, let's boycott and move out.
Absolutely. It would also be equally bad for those who are in government to always refer to the opposition as people who probably are not worth doing anything good for the country. That we should really try as much as possible to avoid. But to go back to the finances, extremely important, because parties must have the money. They must have the money if they must do their job. Whether the party in the government or the parties which are in government in waiting, so to speak. It's good language. I wish everybody could adopt that, and people stop referring to them as opposition. Extremely important to change the name, because it connotes negative things. And the negative things definitely will always bring some level of friction between those who are in government and those who are in the opposition. But finances, very important. How do we raise finances for of course the government doesn't have a lot of money to give the kinds of monies that you would need, in order to operate as a political party. But at the same time, because I was being told one time, when we had a federal system of government after 1962 elections, central government sent money to the federal states. You remember we had quite a number of them. And for almost 6 years, those federal governments, or should I say federal states, yeah, you remember we had Buganda, Soga, Eastern Uganda, Bunyoro, Angola, and so on and so forth. Monies were sent by the central government to those states, and for 6 years there was no accountability. In the same way, if government must give money to all political parties, there must be accountabilities. Money must be accountable, because those are public funds. If it's private money, fine, that's okay. If some private person has given you money, probably wants to influence your ideology, that's okay. A private company becomes friendly, for instance, FDC, and gives it money, that's okay. But all finances that must come from government must also be accounted for. And therefore it is incumbent upon all political parties, including my own political party, which is the NRM, to account for all the funds that are advanced to them. Extremely important. So it places a responsibility on all the political parties that once you get public funds, you must. But then parties also, as we've said before, have to go out, because that which comes from government is not enough. They must go their friends. They must go their friends and look for money, probably from the private sector, and look for money to do their political campaigns. Yeah.
Well, time is flying so very fast, but as we wind up, there is also something very important as we talk about multi-party dispensation in this country. Let's look at the issue of political tolerance. One of the evils of political parties in our country, the late political parties, if you remember the hatred between UPC and DP, where post gardens would be slashed, destroyed, people are being hunted because of their political affiliation. Since 2005, I want to get your comment on political tolerance, both for those in the government in waiting and those in the ruling government. How far have we gone into this maturity to levels of tolerance? That yes, our fathers, our grandfathers had a time when you couldn't support UPC and I support DP and even sit, even our daughters wed, I mean our son or daughter. Today, have we improved political tolerance, or are we still really in a state of quagmire?
As political parties, of course, it's good that you're mentioning that. I mean, in the 1960s, the main players were DP and UPC. And so the level of tolerance between these two political parties was almost zero. Yeah, that's when people would cut your banana plantations, as long as you belonged to the other side of the political dispensation. They would cut your coffee plantation. Sometimes even killing would happen between, adherents of the two political sides. Now, of course, I want to say, because I've lived in both times, now and then, and so I can compare, that as of now, there is actually a lot of tolerance in the country. Yes, there are still issues, I agree, between the political parties, that if you belong to FDC and I belong to NRM, I must hate you. If you belong to NUP and I belong to NRM, you must hate me. That one is still there. Otherwise, how would you explain a situation where somebody's hands are nailed together because he belongs to NRM? Otherwise, how do you explain what happened during the riots shortly before the 2021 elections, as people erected roadblocks targeting women clad in yellow because they were NRM and beating them and torching roads and all these kinds of things? And surprisingly, the NRM actually supporters, unlike in the past, the NRM supporters tolerate people from across the political aisle much more than those from across the political aisle, because those who nailed that boy, both hands, you remember, the story was in the media for a very long time, and those who erected the illegal roadblocks and they torched roads and they were fleecing people of money and so on, belonged to the opposition, which you are now calling alternative government.
Yes.
Surprisingly, that surprises me, because when I lived during the earlier times, when we had multi-party politics in the 60s and also in the early 1980s, it was actually the supporters of government attacking their opponents from across the political aisle. These days, it is the opposition that actually attacks the NRM supporters. It so surprises me. But that gives me really a level of comfort that I think we have moved in terms of tolerance, because if those in government can actually tolerate those from across the political aisle, it is a level of tolerance that I have not seen before. And I think we must thank God so much for that, because we seem to be on the right track, on the right trajectory in terms of political tolerance. And I wish we could build on that.
Well, it has been a very interesting discussion regarding multi-party politics in Uganda. One would say there's still so much improvement that has to be done. Of course, also tolerance. We must come to a point to understand that these are just political parties. In politics, it's not a do or die. There's always a winner, there's a loser. In politics, it is choice of what you choose to support. You can support whatever you want, I support whatever I want, but at the end of the day, we remain Ugandans. Well, since Ambassador, you're traveling back very soon, let me just have your final remark in less a minute to our
Absolutely, and that is the most important thing, the thing you have ended with, political tolerance in this country. We must have it. We should have had it even yesterday, not today, so that we can accept that, yes, when somebody, it's just like you're supporting football teams, that if somebody belongs to the other political party and I belong to this, that doesn't bring about enmity. So Ugandans should try as much as possible to rate each other.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Henry Mayega, who happens to be Uganda's Consul General to Uganda's consulate in Dubai. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All I can wish you is a safe flight back, and please, when you reach there, let the people know that Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, we love them, and of course the Ugandans that have been watching and they are best in the United Arab Emirates. Thank you so much for always having a heart at home on our various social media platforms. We see your comments, we see you flowing in, moving with us. Thank you for being away from home, but with a heart of home. Have a lovely day, God willing. See you tomorrow. Stay safe as we await for the good news to be declared Ebola free just hours from now. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.